Okay, this is the last video for week 3 in Church History 1, and I want to take just a few moments to deal with one last aspect which I consider to be just really interesting, having to do with discipline in the early church, and particularly with respect to the conflict that happened between Callistus, the Bishop of Rome, and Tertullian, the Bishop of Carthage, in the 3rd century, around 200 to 215 A.D. Now, as a background, again, you'll find this described, at least in part, in your textbook. Dr. Shelley describes this, that here's a background. The persecutions and resultant martyrdoms of the early church are certainly some of the most inspiring, heroic stories that we have in the heritage of Christianity. However, there's a dark side to this. There's a downside to it, and the downside has to do with those from within the early church who did not stand for truth, who actually broke over and confessed allegiance and worship to Caesar and did not pay the price. So the broader question has to do with forgiveness. The particular question has to do with the nature of the church, and this was a topic that we find described as the question: is the church a society of saints or a school for sinners? Now, here's the again, as it turns out, that what happened whenever these lapsed ones. Now, they lapsed perhaps because they confessed to Caesar and did not stand for the Lord, and they backed off from the faith. They withdrew from full allegiance to Christ, or it may be because they committed some type of serious sin. And the theology of that time was not developed to the point where they had a clear understanding of the forgiveness, the absolute forgiveness that's available in Christ. So therefore, the development of concepts of penance took place. And we have to understand the very nature of this, that this is not simply that somebody did something wrong and we have to try to work out a way to get them back in good standing with the Lord. This had to do with life and death issues. The martyrdoms and the persecutions of the early church are certainly a high point, but it's also forced an issue that still lives with us today, which has to do with how do people overcome serious sin. And as you have perhaps read, Callistus, the ex-slave, who was the Bishop of Rome, developed the ability, the understanding of some type of lenience that would make a way and make a provision, make some way that these people who had backed away from the faith could come back into fellowship with those who had paid such a price. Perhaps they'd lost family members, their wives or their husbands or their children. They'd seen them tortured because they refused to break over. And now these that they considered to be half-hearted believers were going to come back and worship with them again. The confessors didn't feel it was fair, and it was very difficult. And we have to understand that. So Callistus developed some system of leniency that they would do certain things to get back in good standing. Of course, the one who was opposed to that was Tertullian, and he said, no, only God can forgive, and he doesn't forgive that. Tertullian was very rigid, very harsh, very hard, but he stood for full obedience. So Tertullian would say that the church should have holiness, should have integrity. We'll hear that even today, that the church should be a place where people live their lives correctly. And the standard is held up of obedience to Christ. And so in that light, the church would be a society of saints. And among those saints are some who are absolutely stellar, and we admire their obedience and their examples. Callistus and others would say, no, nobody's perfect, and we must make allowance for those who have fallen, and so the church will be a school for sinners. I think you can see how this plays itself out even today. And the answer to that, it's a simple little phrase, but it would be that we hold up the standard, but minister to the exception. We hold up the standard of holiness. We hold up the standard of what God says is best, while at the same time we make provision for those who have not measured up. We do not let go of the standard just because there are so many exceptions. And because there are so many exceptions, we will not let there be a softening of the nature of the holiness of God. So we keep these things in balance. It's just amazing how this was already operating in the 2nd, 3rd century, and we have it today. God bless you as you study and as we walk these things out in the church today. God bless.